I may have to quit and come. Oh, we're live. There we go. I thought we were gonna have a disaster. Happy New Year, Joey.
Happy New Year,
Yeah, I'm
2025.
yeah, psyched to be crushing. I've got like a million things to do and to talk about. I've got almost no deep in news. I woke up this morning to a minor disaster. I've just been fixing that. Usually, I spend the hour or so before this working on the various deep in news. So maybe there's a ton of stuff out there that's a big surprise, but I haven't seen any of it.
Yeah. Hopefully people are out there touching grass a little bit, taking the time.
Yeah, I've had a ton of fun. I've been working on the BusPirate thing. So Travis told me to get this BusPirate, I don't know, a while ago. I never used it. Didn't know what it was for. I just figured Travis told me to get it, so I was getting it. And then was I'm writing as you know, I'm writing the grant for this demo dashboard, and I realized part of it is you have to show people how to configure a device. And I'd always thought like, oh well, that's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. And I thought about it some more. I'm like, that's actually should be its own separate tutorial on the
Mm.
Medio Scientific piece, like a separate page, because you don't necessarily need to build a dashboard for every device, but you need to configure a device before you do anything. And
Sure.
I don't think I'd had anything on there about configuring it with, connecting to it with the, what is it, USB to TTL.
Hmm. Little
And so,
serial converter.
yeah,
Yes.
so I spent like the last 3 days figuring that stuff out. And just every time I'd get stuck, I'd ask Travis, and he would look at his, and it makes a lot more sense to him a lot faster than it does to me. He'd be like, "Oh, did you try this?" I'm like, "Oh, that gets me like the next step." It's like a choose your own adventure, and you're always progressing.
Yeah. I saw you threw a guide up on that. That's out there now, right?
Hmm. Yeah, so the guide's out there. I think I'm looking at the site right now. There's also a copy of this structure your data, um, the good housekeeping for LoRaWAN sensor fleets, and it was something that came up, but like that's a draft page, and I haven't figured out how to show that it's a draft page. It's like I screwed something up, so you can go look at this thing and see what I'm doing, but it's not a complete piece. I'll share a URL with you, Joey, so you can see it. Although anyone could, I guess, look and see this thing. It's on the MetSci piece. Because what hit me as I was doing this, what's up, 619? What's up, Haywood? Haywood
That was a
Jablomi, what a
404.
name. Um, what hit me when I was doing this was as I was feeding data through from the sensor to the MetSci LNS to an HTTP integration to Node-RED to the InfluxDB, was that InfluxDB is, what is it called, a time series database?
Hmm.
Whatever it is, it only takes data in a certain format. And if you get anything wrong, if you use like nanoseconds instead of milliseconds, or if you do, there's like a bunch of stuff you have to get everything right. And so I started thinking about, if I'm going to be running this MetSci LNS thing, I better have all of my codecs set up to send all of my data in a way that is readable by the database. And if I'm making that mistake, I bet other people are making that mistake too. And
Mm.
so I started looking for, and this is this fairly deep, dark rabbit hole. What are the generally accepted practices for like labeling data or organizing data? Turns out that's not small.
I think that comes up every single time I'm in person with the Lorelei. Somebody's talking about some sort of standard there.
Yeah. And does it exist? I
Yep.
found some stuff for like GPS stuff, but oh, yeah.
There's Yeah, you make a standard, and then there's 10 more standards. One of those type of things.
Okay.
It's pretty nebulous, but I like this idea that you're laying out, which is just like do your housekeeping up front as you bring a new class of devices on. Just make sure those codecs are fitting what you're going to be doing with them.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So it's been super exciting. And then I thought, what I'll spend some time doing is going through all of the devices I have, which are really all of the applications. It's like I figure this stuff out when I'm like looking at it, but I don't have it in my head yet where I can explain it super well. But in the MetSci Chirp stack, it doesn't lay everything out as like, okay, there's devices and then there's, I guess they call them groups of devices or applications, but you could have like trackers that are for tracking, Joey's fleet of off-road vehicles. And then you
Mm.
could have another app, and those fire every, 2 minutes. You could have another application with the same devices, that say, hey, now we're tracking like Nick's tractors, and those might need to get tracked every hour or 2 hours instead of every 10 minutes.
Mm.
And so you can have these different applications for different devices. I started thinking, I need to go through every single one of my applications, every single one of my, what is it, the other one, the device, something or others. Basically, the thing that allows you to
Profile.
get to the codec
Yeah.
profile, I think,
Yep.
um, and make it so that all of them follow the same standard. So that when I put in temperature in the codec or whatever it spits out on the other end, it will always be lowercase temperature. It won't be like uppercase temperature or Fahrenheit or Celsius
Mm.
or degrees or whatever. It'll always just be
Or a integer versus a float, or like all those types of, yeah.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah. It's like all this super nerdy stuff.
Yep.
But it hit me that um, basically you can be like, I was so excited to get data on and to get devices connected that I was just like willy nilly, whatever was like, fuck it, I'll call it temperature. I was just like, I just want to see the uplink. I just want to see this thing like pop.
Mhm.
And then you go through and you're like, all right, I've named the same thing 5 different ways with 5 different methods. And when you're trying to get that into a database to have a dashboard that shows a bunch of different pieces, that doesn't
I,
work.
whenever I get around to finally doing something of scale, I I'm gonna have to just like create a whole new MetSci account, because the one
Yeah.
that I have with you right now is just every time I'm on a call with somebody giving a demo, it's like demo device, demo device. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the other thing I'm going to do, and I tried to do this last year and just, I don't know, I fucking got distracted by some other new and shiny thing, is I wanted to bring in someone to help me rewrite not only the device profile templates in my account, but the MetSci device profiles so that anyone could pull these down and basically
mm,
anyone who wanted to, instead of figuring out their own, I think it's called a schema or a schema,
mm,
like their own way of organizing data, they could just use mine, and that will be published in this good housekeeping piece where it's like, hey, if you're gonna use this, just use the lowercase temperature all the time. Don't bother with Celsius or Fahrenheit or
but
degrees or whatever.
that's one of the things that I always loved about DataCake, is that they would put a lot of effort into device onboarding, and then they would just put the codec in there. And sometimes it was actually a better resource to go figure out what that device decoder was supposed to be. I would
Yep.
just go and create it there, copy it, and move it over.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. No, I think that's a super cool thing with data cake, and I think yeah, I'd like to be able to offer the same kind of thing for NetSci. The other thing that I've been working on is a script. All of these different things, Node-RED, Grafana, whatever. Pick your whatever tooling, pick your application. They all have a docs dot. So there's a docs dot and there's a docs dot helium, right?
mm,
Docs.helium.com,
mm,
docs.grafana.com, docs.node-RED, docs.influxdb. And the documentation for some of them, like the InfluxDB documentation is really good, but you've got to go through and find what you're looking for, um, which isn't a big deal. But I think I'm certainly working much more in Chat GPT than I'm working like looking at these various docs, and maybe I just need
mhm,
to change my workflow. But the insight I had is that now ChatGPT has this way where you can kind of build a custom chatbot, which I think Travis has done for the Helium grant. Like if you need help building a Helium grant, there's a chatbot that'll help you with that. And I wanted to do the same thing. I don't understand why like InfluxDB doesn't have that on their site where you have a chatbot that you can work with. You're saying like, hey, I'm installing this and doing this. Like, how could I change this, or how should I configure this, or whatever? This is my specific, unique Snowflake circumstance. They don't have that, but it's pretty easy to build. So if you have docs, you just take all the docs, you put them into ChatGPT, you build your own InfluxDB GPT, and you're off to the races. And so I've been working on writing this script, and I think this is like basic stuff that someone probably did in the 1980s, and I've just got to figure it out myself now, is how do I give this script the first URL, so docs.node-RED or influxdb.com, and say, hey,
mm,
build me a PDF of the entire documentation based on what is publicly available, just by scraping their site and going through and
mm,
being, as polite as possible about it. I don't think that's wrong,
mm.
but I also don't know anything like scraping seems like a bad thing, but this seems like, God damn it, you guys aren't doing it yourselves. I'm not doing anything crazy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So,
You want like the technical manual version, and not the like click here to see this and click here to see this. Like,
yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. I like that.
So I want to build a script that says, and I always think of this in human terms, and that's like the great gift of LLMs is say, hey, go to this site and get like build me a book where there's chapters, and then when you scrape, the page 37, you don't need to put the footer in on page 37. You don't need to put the chapter in. You don't need to have like this janky thing.
Oh, you know what you could do
Hmm.
is if those docs are open source, like they are with Helium, you could just pull the GitHub repo and then you've got everything like right there and you're not having to like scrape individual pages and like worry about getting rate limited and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I mean, so the influx DB thing I did, it's 387, 389 pages, and I don't know why. Maybe I don't know. No, you weren't on the last one. But I've got
Mm.
this thing when I build these scrapers, like I want them to never get blocked. Like I don't want
Sure.
them to never go to sleep. I want them to never get timed out. Like I just want them to kind of work and basically not be a load on the page it's scraping.
Hmm.
And so I want in many cases, the website will have some kind of dynamic ability to say, hey, you're going too fast, slow down. And it'll
Hmm.
return what is it, like a 429, something. It's always a nerd talk header that's like, hey, you're going too fast, slow down. And I always want my script to say like, cool, we'll slow down and back off. And then we'll just try and figure out like, what's the fastest I can scrape at that is polite.
Right.
Which I don't like. It doesn't matter. I could just fucking hammer it until it blocks me, and then rest 15 minutes or whatever it is, and fucking hammer it again. But I don't want
Yeah.
to do that. I've got this specific way that is just
It-
me.
Well, going back to deep in stuff, isn't this kind of what Grass is trying to do? Like
I
they
don't
want
know.
to
Are
be
they?
a big scraper for LLMs and stuff.
Huh? I didn't know.
I don't know.
No, I never. I
I
saw it. Yeah, yeah. I don't
I'm
know
I'm
anything
not
about it.
sure. Don't quote me on that, but
619 wants a helium GPT. I'll I'll build that on a grant. Let me
there
figure
you
out
go.
my docs
Yeah.
thing first, and I'll figure this thing out.
Well, let's make sure we get all the old stuff out of docs first, so it's not talking about pre-migration.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
cleanup that needs to happen in there.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing that's been going through my head as I've been going through my own, like building the Met Sci docs is Joey's voice. Like, God, docs are just super hard. They're just really complicated. You have something that used to mean, it used to count and now it doesn't count. It used to be right. Now it's not right.
Yeah, they really have to be like the first thing you do after anything changes. It's got to be the first touch point for all that stuff.
Yeah.
Or you just need like dedicated people that are just always on it, like improving and rewriting.
Yeah. I don't know. Did you mean LLMs 619? Let's see. Add to broadcast. God damn it. I think you meant LLMs, but maybe you meant scrape the docs into like an LM connected to the LNS. This is like my great hope for MetSci is I would love it if when you're on the MetSci console and you have a problem, there's like a little chat bot down on the bottom that's like, hey, looks like you're getting your ass kicked by that codec. Can I help you?
Some products are starting to do really cool things around that, like Dune, writing queries to like query chain data and stuff. There's a little magic like fix this query for me when it errors out and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, which is sometimes helpful, sometimes terrible. Um, but like it is the right like UX step where like, oh, I got hit with an error. What feed this error into the LLM and then like maybe it'll give me some suggestion or like rewrite the thing so that it works and then I can always undo. So yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I'm psyched like on all the rad stuff that's coming down the pipe. I didn't do anything on any of the deep in news. I think the biggest deep in news this last week was, let's see, I'm just scrolling through the DPU5 stuff over on the GK server.
Yeah. My
Um,
3D printer just started, so if it's loud, let me know.
no, I'm not getting anything. Let's see.
Okay.
Amir was talking to the market movers folks. So just Helium getting more good coverage, fintech.tv stuff.
Mhm.
Sourceful is, what are they talking about? Oh, they redesigned their Discord server. I think the biggest thing was the Wingbits. The GeoSigner is shipping. And
Hmm.
I actually had seen this. I'll put the Wingbit stuff. Are there? Where are they? No, WeatherXM. Nope, that's not them. Wingbits. There we go.
I need to get myself a wing bits. I don't know if it makes sense for me in the Bay Area, but
It's probably pretty well covered. I don't know. It's like it was a fun project because it required or it allowed you to use a lot of the knowledge that we gotten on helium.
Mhm.
But these guys just came out with their geosigner. So when they first launched, it was just like helium, bring your own pie. And if you brought your own pie and attached an antenna and blah, 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 cavity filter and whatever fancy shit you put on there, you could do pretty well. Um,
Mhm.
and then they realized probably the same thing that helium realized. It's like, shit, we're going to have spoofers. So they decided to work with Mike over at GeoNet, who's really good at doing hardware, and say, hey, how do we get some hardware that is anti-spoofing? And over the course of the last year, I forget who did what. I just know that they've worked with Mike, and I'm pretty sure that this is a collaboration. They just came out with this piece of hardware that you're going to attach to your Wingbits device, and it will be non-spoofable.
Mm.
So that's kind of cool.
Great. Yeah.
We'll see how that works out. But they made an announcement in their Discord, and for the folks like me who kind of halfway pay attention, pretty savvy with deep in, but just didn't pay a ton of attention, it was like, oh, the directions on it were not the clearest. And I saw
Mm.
a bunch of people come in, and it just reminded me of the early helium days where it's like the founders know what's going on, and they expect you to know also that you followed every single thing, and you also know what's going on. And then, and I didn't see
Read
them
all
get irritated.
150 hips. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm sure at some point they're going to get pissed and be like, why the fuck can't you guys just read the direction? It's like, you guys got to make them super clear. It's got to be push button easy because you got people who have, you know, 90 different discords they're in, and they don't follow they don't like pet your baby every day.
Right. Yeah. Communications around that stuff is hard. It's just like docs. Like you
Yeah.
gotta you gotta be loud enough about this stuff that people are informed, but not so loud that they mute you. And it's like it's a
Yeah.
constant battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I wanted to help a lot of projects with. And I haven't found a compelling way to say like, hey, this messaging piece is actually, it's important in the sense that it will just make your organization more efficient if you don't have to deal with answering the same question over and over again because you formulated the whatever it was, the message in the right way the first time so that everybody could
Mhm.
get it.
Yep.
So
Yep. Or put it in your app or you know whatever. Like it's just got to be sort of front and center and clear.
yeah, the Wingbits is fun. It got saturated. Did it get saturated super fast? It was better when it was just you and me, 609. Totally. Uh, Although I still got to get mine out in the mountain. My heels are just now kind of recovering to the point where maybe in the next month or so I can start doing these longer hikes. But yeah, I thought the Wingbits stuff was super cool. And if you have a Wingbits device and it's a bring your own device, it's one of the early Raspberry Pis. You just have to run the update script. They've got directions. If you read through the directions and kind of skip around a little bit and figure shit out, which is not that hard to do, you just have to know that you do have to pay a little bit of attention. It's not that difficult to get done. So let's see what else is going on. I think the Wingbits one was a big one. Like it's cool to see people shipping hardware. Max and I talked to a company the other day that we've been talking to for the past 2 years, and I would be psyched to help these guys out. They're not quite ready to launch super hard yet, but they're doing what I think most deep-ins should do right now, which is really thinking about preparing for 2025 and whenever the market takes off. We've had a couple false starts so far. It cranks. Let's go. K38. Shawnee, what's going on?
What's up, John? Yeah.
Holla. Yes, I think she called, or she's been watching I've been watching her on Twitter. She called that
She's been
giant waves that
busy.
had been hitting the west coast of America.
Yeah. We saw the Santa Cruz Pier bust off and float away. That
Yeah, with some people on
was
it.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they got rescued by a jet ski. So
Yeah, I saw that. I
I
was
was just
like,
like,
oh,
oh,
I'm pretty sure, I don't think that was Shawnee, but I'm pretty sure that some part of that rescue is due to her knowledge that she spread for the
some
past 35 years.
someone she trained, or
Yeah. Yeah.
someone got trained by her that trained them. Yeah.
Yeah. She's getting ready to go work for Polar Plunge. Yeah, I bet. Is that must be in Morro Bay, which is, I think, where she is. Oh, and the Santa Monica Pier, too, is going to go down. Oh, that's going to be a minor disaster.
Yeah.
So something to cruise down and check out. let's see what else. The Helium grant has consumed most of my time. The BusPirate thing was super cool that I've been doing. I think the next piece is we talked about the doc spot. I've got a
Mhm.
bunch of other like ideas for projects beyond the doc scraper and builder. We talked about some of them. I want to have like some kind of MetSci like LLM integration overall, where it's not just a chat, but it's also something that goes through and helps with decoders on the back end and is more than just like me going in and saying fix this decoder. Have you seen this cognition.ai, this tool called Devin, Devin?
No.
So Devin is they bill it as a junior level software engineer that comes in. It's an AI agent. You spend $500 a month and it integrates with your Slack, which I didn't have a Slack until fucking yesterday. I've avoided it. But it integrates with your Slack and your GitHub. And it's made me think more about organization. So we kind of started the convo talking about database organization and I think schemas. I think that's how you say it. Maybe it's schema.
Schema. Yeah.
Schema, yeah. I like schema better, but I heard some asshole say it's schema. Um,
Crema. I don't know.
yeah.
You're
And I
trying to be
started thinking,
fancy.
God, if I just had a junior level software engineer would be way beyond what I am, right? I'm just like, I'm not even some, you know, I'm like nothing. All I can do is describe what I want. Um, and for $500 a month, I could probably get way more projects done, which I think is the intent. Is that you say like, hey, I'm not going to get, I'm not getting Joey for $500 a month, but I'm getting something where I'm like, hey, can you go take a look at this codec and fix it? I bet it can do that. And I think the other promise there is that over time it builds up an understanding and knowledge of your code base and all your projects and starts putting everything
Mm.
together, and you start getting better and better kind of results. And I got super excited about it, thinking like, okay, is that I need to have a project where it's worth that, but that would be super, super cool.
Yeah. I mean, even just the idea of like your personal LLM tracking everything you've ever asked it and having the context around the general stuff you're working on. I think
Yeah, and
that
I
that would be
wanted to do
interesting
that
to me.
with Monstra, but I found that GPT was just so much better than anything I put on Monstra for like general
Mm.
stuff where I could ask it anything.
Mhm.
Um, I just ended up using GPT for anything. And Monstra
Yeah.
ends up being for like these really specific projects like the KOL monitoring and managing project, where it's like, all right, I've got data in there that is whatever PII or like semi-private, although it's all getting pulled from Twitter anyway. Um,
And you were using Llama for Monstra?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Olama. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, God,
Oh,
I've used everything I can find. But that idea there was
yeah.
that we had a client ask us for help like managing some KOLs or assessing some KOLs, and I was like, oh, I could probably build. And I spent like a couple days mucking about on Twitter and buying access to their API and saying, okay, if this is a list of whatever 12, 24, 500 KOLs that a client or someone gives me, can I give them back a report card based on the activity of each one of those KOLs? How often did you tweet? How often did you mention the client? How often did you mention deepen stuff? How many
Mm.
follow, like basic stuff? How many followers do you have? How many followings? Like the super basic stuff, and then how much engagement do your posts get? Like how good of a job are you doing? And then
Mm.
the idea there is to build this tool that ends up being something where a client would come to Gold Hawks and say, "Hey, we want to use your KOL monitoring thing. Here are our KOLs." And we would do the management side where we'd get those KOLs together and say, "Look, we're going to get on a call once a month. Like, here's the expectation. You're going to tweet about this thing, 7 times a month. We expect the engagement levels on these to be this. We expect this, this, and this. Like, here are the standards." And
Mhm.
then the system will monitor those standards, and the client would say, hey, we're going to set aside whatever percentage, 5% of our tokens, to go to KOLs or marketing or whatever they want to call it.
Mm.
And we
Mhm.
write a smart contract that says basically, if you meet this base level, you earn this many tokens. If you do a better job, you earn more tokens. If you don't do anything, you earn 0 tokens. And just make it so it's totally pay for performance, and
Mhm.
not something that you like anyone is mystified by. So if you're a
Mm.
KOL or influencer and you come in, you're like, I want to get paid for doing nothing. Like, no, that's stupid.
Yeah.
But if you do something
Or
and
or
you're,
get paid for the bot farm that I'm following my own account or like whatever,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Like
Yep.
that's um, this actually sounds like a product that I would have built at one of my old companies that was like an influencer marketing, software thing. That in and of itself could probably be its own startup.
Yeah.
So
And my
uh,
buddy TJ, I
there's
was telling him
something to
about,
it.
he's like, dude, people have done this a bunch before. Like, cause I was like, oh, should I build in private or build in public? He's like, build in public. This is like such old news. But what I'm finding when I talk to deep in clients is that they're like a lot of the stuff that is kind of old hat for Web 2 is for us newer. So it might be super
Mhm.
useful for them.
Yeah, that's there's something to that. Because like typically you would do all your evaluation of performance of creators or influencers or
Yeah.
whatever just based on the metrics that get reported from Twitter or whatever. It's
Mm-hmm.
like they had, you know, 800,000 impressions and 300 click-throughs and whatever else, and you,
Yep.
you rate them on that. But um, a closer eye in, you can always get a better pulse. Like if you as a person just go and read through the comments, right? You're like,
Yep.
oh, cool. Their 12 friends all commented like, wow, pretty. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's up, Jay? And I think the other thing was on that, Joey, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but if you start taking that corpus of information and attaching it somewhere, integrating it with an LLM, you can start to
Mhm.
do, I mean, some stuff you don't need an LLM, you just need Python and a fucking Vader. And you're like, all right, let's do sentiment analysis. And what I've seen in projects is that someone will come in, they'll be super fired up, they'll be really positive the first couple months, and then they have some realization or they misinterpret something, or maybe they just have like a bad time in their own life. And instead of blaming the bad time in their life on them, they blame it on the project and they get super pissed. And I think it would be super helpful for clients if you could see sentiment over time. We're like, oh, when we brought this person on, they were, the Vader goes, I think, -1 to 1. So 1 is super positive, -1 is super negative. Let's
Mhm.
say that they came in at their 0.8, 0.9, and over time you see them like dropping, and then you see them go down to like a 0 or -0.1. That would be pretty important for you as a deep in project to be like, oh shit, like Billy the influencer doesn't like us. Like, let's figure out what's going on and fix
Mhm.
that. Like, either find out what the problem is and make sure that they understand what we're doing, or sometimes you've got projects and influencers or KOLs that just aren't a good match. Like, let's not work together. So hey, you're famous.
You're on the podcast now.
Do I need to delete
Yeah.
this? What's going on?
Uh, uh,
You got
oh, you're
dishes
leaving.
to do?
All right. Yeah.
The boss
She's
came in.
exhausted. She's gonna help her sister clean up from the holiday party or the New Year's party.
Yeah. Lee said fireworks went off at midnight, and I just slept right through them,
I
which was
was
nice.
asleep before midnight. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been to enough New Year's parties now. It's like, I kind of know what happens to those things.
Yep.
Not
I
particularly
like
good.
sleep. It's good.
Not particularly good for me. Yeah. So if you could integrate the sentiment analysis for KOLs, that would be super interesting. And then the other piece
Mhm.
is if you have the LLM helping you kind of write a report card on folks where it's like, hey, this is what they're into, this is what they post about, this is how they do it. And so when you first submit a KOL list to Gold Hawks, you get back, you submit, 40 KOLs, and it's like, hey, here's 40 report cards. There's a big number up
Yeah.
at the top that like gives you a general idea of like this person is really worth pursuing and making sure that you work with them, or this person isn't. And then you can read each one and be like, oh yeah, this person gets great engagement and they also do this and they're positive and they like lobsters and pigs and fucking sailboats or whatever it is based on their
Well, and
past
I
tweets.
mean that's where this gets really interesting is if you can scrape not just your listed KOLs, but everyone that talks about your project, you can start to do the sentiment analysis, but you can also do topic clustering. And so like a particular narrative, right? Like uh, I don't know, partnership with whatever.
Yeah.
Who mentioned it first?
Yep.
Who repeats those things? How does that narrative change over time?
Yep.
You can start to do a lot of really neat stuff to better understand, like somebody posts some FUD. Where did that come from? Right?
Yep.
Um, and who's repeating it, or like how's that impacting your sort of believer base or your followers.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, there's a lot of powerful tools in being able to like see all that stuff all at once.
Yeah. 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 I
There's
think
a whole
that stuff.
business here, I promise you. That's yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just kind of one of many in the, yeah, I think this has been super good. When I've talked to clients who are like, yeah, let me know when you have that.
Mhm.
And we'd like to have it. But again, I was talking to my buddy TJ this morning about this as well. I was like, dude, I think I'm gonna get this Devon thing. And he's like, well, it's good, but it's not that good. And I said, dude, if that thing can take me from like having an idea and it takes me 2 weeks to work through figuring out how to get like a basic working concept, and that goes down to 2 days, because for me, it's not like the clarity of thought is really important, and I'm getting better at that. But the actual execution is the difficult part. And there's all these like little gotchas that I just don't know about. Like
Oh, for
the
sure.
stupid thing with Medio Scientific, if you have an external hard drive, Mac, no matter what you, and you're working with a Mac and GitHub, no matter what you do, Mac will always save these dot underscore files. GitHub doesn't like those. It sometimes will ignore them if you put it in git ignore. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes that just breaks everything. I didn't know that. And if I had just been working on my Mac the whole time instead of on an external drive, I wouldn't have had like these problems with the site that I've had. That's something that I'd expect, like Devin would just never make that mistake in the first
Mhm.
place because everybody knows that.
Right, right.
And so,
Or
you
to
know, that
hallucinate and just screw everything up for you. So
totally possible. Yeah. 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 Maybe just set like a thing where it's like a hard reset or hard backup every 2 hours or something.
sure, yeah. No, I think that's right.
But I think
Um,
accelerating the ability, accelerating the executory ability is something super interesting to me, because I feel like I've got, 10 ideas every week. It's just having the time to execute on each of them. And they all seem fun. And none of them, some of them like, oh, this KOL thing is like, that's probably a lot of fucking money to build that. And if I had like a working product that worked as we just described it right now,
mhm.
it's, I don't know, that's probably fucking 3 to 7 grand a month for a basic thing, for basic access for a client to come in and say, let's do that. Um,
Yeah.
And then the other piece that I had there was that if you're a KOL, I think it's really important to say, hey, what's my what's my score? And so they could come to this thing as well, submit their handle and get a score back. And
Mhm.
maybe they submit a handle and a client. So they're like, hey, I'm working for this project. And they could get a score on that project, and they could also go to a new project, because KOLs, I mean, they're running a business, whether you like it or not. Like influencing is a business piece. Is they could come in and be like, hey, here's my report card. Here's what I did for the last client. Like I don't need to gather all this stuff. Um, Here's what you can see. Here's what
Yeah.
I do. This is what I want. Like it helps them negotiate a good deal.
There was a product that did something like that. I can't remember what its name was, but it would
Yeah,
give you scores on kind of every topic you've ever talked about.
yeah,
Um, and so the interesting thing there is you could see like they talk about my competitor a lot, and
yeah.
you have to make a decision on whether you wanted to engage there or
Deal with them.
not.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, huh.
Let's see. Goose has got a question. I think it's for you. Let's see. Anything in the works to have a business app to hold the wallet and link a secondary app to allow employees to deploy hotspots? I can't spend so much time on deployments. Doesn't
That,
Helium Deploy do something like this or no?
uh, gosh, well, Armon built something like that for the IoT hotspots back in the day.
For
He did a pull
fair spot,
request
right?
into, uh, was am I confusing my people? But basically, you could log somebody into the Helium Wallet app and then hit a lock button, and it wouldn't let you do any sort of like token transfers or see the keys or anything like that.
Yep.
But you could still onboard hotspots.
Yep.
Um, that's probably a feature that could be added to the Helium Wallet app,
Huh.
and just sort of following the existing mechanism
Yeah,
that
like,
was
hey,
in
Cokes, what are you doing? I
the
know it's
old
New
one.
Year's. Let's get cracking on
Yeah,
this.
right. Yeah, it's either Cokes or you go straight to Peroni, get him in it.
Yep.
Um, uh,
No, Happy New
yeah,
Year,
so
Butters.
that's totally something that could be done. Yeah,
Okay,
Happy New
but it's
Year.
it's not on the roadmap as far as you know at this time.
Yes, but I also don't keep close eyes on the
Yeah,
Helium Wallet app, so I'm not sure.
not your baby. Okay.
Well, with the exception of making sure that hotspot onboarding works across IoT and mobile.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
funny.
that kind of crosses into my domain.
Yeah. My dad was talking to me the other day, and he was like, I think I might get some of these helium hotspots. Send me the link. I was like, huh, okay, sure. Let's see what happens.
Cool. Yeah. Did
So
he go IoT or mobile?
I
Probably
think
mobile.
he's going to go mobile because I think that the super persuasive thing, and this was with my buddy up in LA who I bought a couple hotspots for in the fall.
Hmm.
Um, was first, just earning the tokens for having the hotspots up. Like, okay, that's super straightforward. I was like, oh, I'll just split these with you 50-50. Go for it. This will be a nice intro and kind of onboard to crypto for you. I think you weren't on the last week. Like, I walked
Yeah.
him through transferring out his first mobile tokens. I talked about this on the last show. It took like 2 hours to walk him through as a newbie. From
Wow.
like, okay, you take it off the Helium app, and I've even forgotten how I did. I think we tried to put it from the Helium Builder app to Helium Wallet, and then we couldn't do
Uh-huh.
something in Helium Wallet, so we switched to a Phantom, and then we on Phantom it was like this giant ass pain that you and I kind of take for granted. Like, of course that's how you do it. It's super easy. But for someone
Right.
who's never done it before, they're like, this this is not easy.
Huh. This is actually kind of topical. I was thinking just this morning, I haven't seen in one of the biggest things for people with cryptos are like, wait, it's just real money, like I can go sell it or whatever, right?
Yep.
And usually the answer is like, oh yeah, you go to Coinbase, and then Coinbase charges you $20 or whatever to like do some transaction fees and stuff like that. Um, but there's much better products out there. You you can use Jupiter, you can do on-chain swaps, all that kind of stuff. Use, uh,
So here's the thing, Joey, is
uh,
it the old app, which is what most people have, the V2, it didn't work
mhm.
for him. We couldn't get the fucking Jupe swap thing to work. There was Sol in his wallet, and it kept showing him that he didn't have enough Sol. And I'm like, oh, send me a
uh,
screenshot. And he had like $20 of Sol in there. And so
yeah,
finally, and I'm looking at the V3, which I guess I'm fucking ahead of. I'm on some magic thing.
you're on
I
the
thought
test
V3,
flight. Yeah.
yeah, I'm on test flight. So I thought everybody had that, but they didn't. So that was some confusion as well. And it was just easier to send it to send mobile from Helium Builder straight to Phantom, and then everybody's got the same Phantom, and Phantom works. And then the only
Yeah.
other like secret hot tip was do your swaps in Phantom. Like, don't do your swaps on Coinbase because Coinbase will fuck you on fees for the swaps or trades or whatever they
Uh,
call it.
yeah. Well, and furthermore, Phantom charges you a little bit of a fee. It's much smaller than Coinbase, but if you go straight to Jupiter, you end up cutting that fee out.
If
But,
Jupiter works, it's great, but it didn't. It wouldn't work for him. It was like I said, we spent I think it was an hour and 46 minutes. It was like got off the phone. I looked at the phone. I was like, holy shit.
huh, interesting. Uh, yeah, but I guess so. Yeah, unfortunately, it's still like a series of steps, and I
Yeah,
think that's one of the challenges for folks.
yeah,
But you can basically go DEXs, USDC. You can put it in your bank account with Sphere. Like you can do a bunch of that stuff with like pretty
yeah.
minimal fees, and
No, totally.
um,
And for you and
yeah,
I, like it's easy. We're like, oh yeah, when you say Dex, I know what you're talking about. When you say Jupe, I know what you're talking about. I know the difference. Like when you
right,
say Jupe or Jupiter or Jupag, like I know that all those are the same thing.
totally, yeah.
For
And
what
you got to say it like it's an exchange. Like the format of it being decentralized or not doesn't matter in the context of like I just want to turn this into this. Uh,
Yeah, and even then, like an exchange for us is like, oh yeah, I know what an exchange is. But for a normal person who works a regular job and doesn't has never touched stocks, they're like, what,
mhm.
what is this? And they're not. I mean, this friend of mine is not an idiot, so he didn't ask super stupid questions. But all the questions he asked were of, like he just didn't know.
Yeah.
So
Well, and then imagine that, but in the ETH ecosystem where you accidentally send it to the whatever wrong contract.
yeah, yeah.
I've
No,
definitely burned ETH into the vapor because it
yeah.
just
No, I've
yeah
I've got my horror stories of these for sure.
yeah. Uh, gosh, that we always talk about crypto UX, and sometimes it's getting better,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just still terrible.
Well, I think
I will make a shout out. Fuse Wallet from the Squads team.
is it
Just
FUSE?
FUSE. Yeah.
Okay.
Let
Let me
me
see
make sure I
if I
don't
can.
rug you by pointing in it. Yeah, FUSE, fusewallet.com.
All right, stand by. The
Um,
last thing we have on here is Airclaw. I don't know. I don't know what that is, but
Oh, that was Peroni's or the DY Cats thing.
Okay, FUSEwallet.com.
Yep.
All right, so
So I
link.
learned about this at Breakpoint. I believe it is public now, but it basically just feels like a banking app, uh, but it's entirely crypto.
Hmm.
Um, you throw some USDC in there, you throw some Sol in there. There's a button that you can press to like stake it or to put it into uh, protocols for FUSC, UC. I don't know. Um,
Thank you, Jay.
I don't get it. It's too early for me.
Yeah,
Um, but some of the cool stuff they're doing is they're starting to bring in, you can get a credit card through this and it'll actually draw directly as like a debit from the tokens in there. So like it's taking all of the sort of like off-board, onboard steps out and you just kind of interact with your tokens like they're anything else.
yeah.
Um, so I'm really excited for that team. I've had a chance to chat with them a little bit about it. And they seem to have like a super laser focus on where they want this thing to end up.
Okay, Joey promises these guys are good. You will never die if you use this. Uh,
It's
infallibility is yours if you just use Fuse
I
Wallet.
there's a lot of good things to say about the team that built squads. So I would implicitly put a lot of faith in their approach.
Do your own research,
But do your own
as always.
research. Yeah,
I was talking
yeah.
to a buddy of mine today, or a couple days ago in Colorado, and he's like, "Dude, I'm getting crushed on crypto. Like, do you have any hot tips?" And I'm like, "Not really. Like, I don't know any more about this stuff than the next person, and they usually like don't put anything you can't use." And I said, these are the cryptos that I'm holding, but do your own research." And he's like, he was laughing because in crypto we always say do your own research, like figure it out. But I
Mhm.
guess in financial circles, he's like, he thought it was funny because he's like, this isn't the SEC. Like, you're not, like, you don't have to say that. You're not like some securities trader. And I was like, oh, I'm just used to saying it and making sure that people know that's like, this is a
Yeah,
pretty
yeah. I
dangerous
guess
place to play.
do your own research in crypto circles usually means I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm doing, so you should figure this out for yourself.
Yeah.
At
I mean,
least that's how I use it.
I use it more like, hey, I did mine, but
Mhm.
I miss stuff. Like, you can miss stuff all the time. The internet's a complicated place.
Yeah.
Um, and you
I
should
think
make sure that you, yeah, good.
my favorite thing that I see is people give a whole Twitter thread of financial advice, like go buy this token, blah blah blah, and then at the end, like some sort of Hail Mary, they say not financial advice. And it's like, well, you don't just to get to like absolve yourself of financial advice by putting that at the end of a big financial advice thread.
Yeah.
Um,
And I also think, like, if you were so sure about this, I haven't met that many people who are like, hey, I've got this secret way of doing things that's awesome and it makes me a ton of money. And if I shared it, I can only imagine that it'll stop making a ton of money because you stop having the edge. Like, those seem to be more about getting followers or getting you to buy their super secret course than it is like about actually following good advice.
yeah,
Maybe I'm jaded.
don't get me started on meme coin season right now.
Oh, dude.
It's a little wild out there.
Yeah. So let's see what else is going on that I'm psyched on.
I mean, I'll say that like we had the IoT working group earlier this week, and it was just kind of a chill hangout thing
Oh, cool.
because we're all in New. I was on Monday, um, but the coolest thing about sort of big blocks of time off
Hmm.
is all of the nerds of the ecosystem put their heads down and start building stuff.
Dude,
Um,
yeah. Like, I don't know what
so
anyone else to do. I've been fucking cranking.
yeah, so I'm really excited to see, in the coming month, people starting to like wrap these things up and start sharing them. But Star Watcher was doing this whole like model, um, uh, basically RF, taking a bunch
Yep.
of lessons from Helium on
Yep.
RF modeling and applying it to Meshtastic.
Yep.
And he's been working with the Meshtastic team to like do a bunch of cool stuff there. Um, there's people building some sensor solutions. There's some cool home assistant stuff that I've been seeing with Helium. Um, so I've been seeing these little sneak peeks as people give me little DMs and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see that
There's
stuff
there's
landing.
rad stuff. I think that one thing I've come on building this dashboard piece is really thinking there's two aspects to it. One, I think it's personally important to me to make sure that people have the tools to do this really technologically complex piece, which is to take data from your sensor, get it through the MetSci LNS, do an HTTP integration, use a Cloudflare tunnel, like all of these things that for a normal person are like, nope, I couldn't do that. Like I want
Hmm.
to have this piece be like, hey, as long as you can read and follow directions and copy paste, and you can buy the $150 worth of stuff, you can do this. So I think enabling people to use high tech is one really exciting part for me. But the part that I'm really struggling with is where are these really clear use cases where you spend the $150 on this stuff and you get more than $150 of value back? And I'm
Hmm.
not as clear on those. Like I've had so much fun deploying sensors and figuring it out and kind of getting them to work. I haven't focused as much on building an actual business with them and saying like, look, when you have this data, this is exactly what you can do, and this is how you use it. Like I haven't
Well,
executed on that far enough.
and I think there's a split here between business and home use. Like, what is the
Mm.
thing that I'll go put, an hour into to, tinker around and add to my home assistant?
Yep.
I think that's a very different thing than, I want to scale some refrigerator tracking solution or, whatever that
Yeah.
kind of thing is. Um, I think that's one sort of left to sort of the comments, like what is the thing that you could go deploy in a home that gives you, more value than the hour or the $150 or whatever it is that you put into it? Is it the mailbox sensor? Is it a soil moisture for your fruit tree? Is it my sauna sensor, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
there's all sorts of silly things that you can do. Um, and maybe it's just building a platform or a technique to be sort of open-ended about those things. But I think it's good to have that narrow focus and just say like, you know what, we're going to do leak detection for your electric heater, and this is how it's going to get done. Or yeah.
Yeah. I would like to have this is just me. I would like to have better solutions, certainly on the MetSci site that says, hey, if you spend this $150, like I'll show you right away how it will save you $150 over the next year. No questions asked.
Yeah.
Not like if one thing happens and you don't do this or you do that. Like, and I don't have that. I don't have a piece
Yeah.
where it's like, hey, put in this people counter and you will in some way like be able to see this value come back, or put in this soil moisture sensor where if you didn't put it in, you wouldn't have that same ability. I think there are things like you put in the soil moisture sensor and it's like it's fun. I fucking love. I don't know why. It's like in the same way that I like used to like going out to bars and trying trying to have a good time and getting fights. Like now I love onboarding sensors. Like maybe I'm just growing up.
It's magic, right? Like you seeing that stuff come through, you're like, wow, this is a big complex system that exists for me to like see one thing here happen there.
Yep.
That's
But
cool
I
stuff.
haven't found a thing where it's like at the end of the thing of onboarding a sensor, um, I can say, okay, now that I have this, I can do something that I couldn't do before beyond just like being able to look at data, which is, it's cool. Like, oh, here's the soil moisture sensor in my garden and it goes up and down over the year. And here's what happens when we don't water, we go on vacation or we forget or whatever. But that's not yet to me valuable enough to say to, go bang on every door in my neighborhood and say, look, if you're not doing this, you're missing out big
Mhm.
time.
I'll throw this one out there again as my idea.
Yeah,
Um,
shoot.
so I live in a fire danger area, and we've got one of those little Park Service signs that says fire danger low, fire danger high, right? And it's
Uh-huh.
5 colors. I want to get it's upstairs now, but the little busy light
Yeah.
changes colors. Onboard 500 of them, take them to every household in the neighborhood. Everyone plugs this thing in their garage. They have a close to home indicator of like, I need to be careful when I'm, you know,
Yeah.
barbecuing or whatever.
Yep.
Uh, and then the layer on top of that is we also have in California, was spare the air days, where it is
Mm.
illegal to burn wood. And so you make it blink on spare the air days. And now you have something that's super passive, improve safety for your neighborhood, right? It's just kind of a neat thing. I think there's opportunity for somebody to grab a grant from, Cal Fire or whatever. Um, and then I think that's something that could possibly scale, right? Like if you see success, if you see sort of impacts around that. Um, Also, it's really easy to build. So
Yeah, yeah,
like,
it's not that.
why not?
I was
Yeah.
laughing that I showed my mom. She's in town. All my little, gizmos and gadgets and stuff that works. And I showed her my busy light, and she's like, "Oh, do you use that to get out of Zoom calls?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "Oh, you should turn it on and make it so that when you're like in a
Yeah.
Zoom call you don't want to be in, you can start to say like, 'Oh, hey, I gotta
Oh,
go,
there it
guys. Like,
goes.
just
Yep.
had this alarm.'"
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I've got mine plugged into the sauna sensor, and I think
Yep,
I've talked about this a couple of times, but
I bet
it
I did.
turns orange, and then I like, hey, it's sauna time.
Yeah, yeah, sauna's
And if
hot.
I, yep, it looks just like that. Yep.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's like, oh,
so
sorry, sorry. I'm really sorry. I got the one thing.
yeah. So there, it's a simple, it couldn't be a simpler device. It's a RGB LED connected to the internet,
Yep.
but you could do a lot of really powerful things with it. And I think part of this like paralysis around solution building is it needing to be complicated, and they really don't have to be. And that's kind of the power of LoRaWAN and Helium, is that you can do these things really cheap, and you can spend, just the amount of time you need to get it working, and then go get it out there and learn, and then build the next thing and let it be complicated from there. But it doesn't have to be out of the gate. Like that solution be built in a weekend.
Yeah. 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 No, I think the other thing, and maybe I just got to spend time doing it, is making sure you explain it well to people. So 619 just had this thing. We've got a local hike here called, what is it? 619. It's like Three Sisters Falls or something like that. There's a super cool waterfall that you can hike to, and routinely, every in the summer and the spring, people will walk right past the sign that says "Do not walk here when the temperatures are predicted to be over here. Do not bring your
Mm,
dog. There's no water
mm.
like on the trail back up. Like people get helicoptered here off here all the time. They walk right by it, go down, pass out heat exhaustion. Their dog goes tits up, and then they're like, "Oh, we need 911." It like maybe there's a piece where you just have like a blinking red light that blinks when people come by, and you're like, "Hey, this is extra.
Yeah,
Don't do this.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, just like a extra serious, if this light is blinking, you are in danger
You're
kind of
probably
thing.
gonna
And
die." So
yeah,
yeah. But
um,
I mean, as
and
619 says, like
yeah.
people will hike this in the summer. Be like, "Oh, it's 100. Great. I'll hike down to the waterfall. It'll be cool."
Forgetting they have to come back up. Is that how that
Yeah.
works?
Yeah.
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 But yeah, like talking about these, the thing that you're building right now, you build a service that checks the temperature based on a set of conditions, sends a, a, a command to the light, starts blinking. You know, that is it. That is
Yeah.
the thing that needs to be
Yeah.
built.
No, it's doing that, and then it's going to the park service and saying like, "Hey, I've got this thing. You guys might
Mhm.
find it interesting. Let's do it." And the last time I did that with the people counters, they're like, "Oh, this sounds awesome," and then they thought it was surveillance technology, so they couldn't do it. It was like a
And
minor disaster.
and
So
that's the learning, right?
yeah,
And it turns out if the thing's got eyeballs, then they start to panic a little bit.
if it's got
But
lidar, they freak out. I'm like,
yeah,
this is built to fucking not be. It's built by these goddamn Europeans who hate surveillance on everything.
yeah,
Um, but yeah,
yep.
there it is. We learn.
But yeah, you build and learn. I think we're at the point now where we've all built a little bit, or we've seen other people build things and had those lessons, and
Yeah,
uh, you just got to take those lessons and keep pushing through.
yeah. I think maybe we end this thing up because we got a couple minutes left. Joey, is that we talked about this maybe a couple times before? Is I would like to see Travis put back together his hacks thing and do a weekly or bi-weekly or whatever schedule he wants to do that's more than once a month of like,
Hmm.
hey, what are you hacking on? And make that a public helium thing. And Trav, I'm pretty sure you're watching this because I saw you comment earlier. If there's anything I can do to help with that, if we want to host that on GK or Metsai or like whatever, 100% let me know. But I think this kind of stuff where it's like, hey, how do we just brainstorm for these with these ideas and then execute on it together as a group or a team? I would love to
Yep.
see way more of that. That'd be rad. So, Travis, bring
Yeah.
back hacks 2025. Get it done, dog.
We'll do it. So many people have been hounding him about it. He knows. He knows.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are exactly the right conversations to have. As a community, we can all sort of have that thing in the back of our head. try and build toward it. But yeah, talk about some other stuff too.
Yeah. 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 Well, I guess, no, I'll push it. Maybe I'll just start hosting the, what do they call all
Yeah,
those?
just
Like,
put
yeah.
it on his calendar. And
Yeah. Or I'll just be like, hey, I'll put it on the GK thing. Like, this is the Travis Teague hacks. Like, sometimes he shows up, sometimes he doesn't.
grace us with your presence. And,
Yeah.
yeah. Yep.
All right, buddy. Well, good to see you. Happy New Year 2025. Let's fucking crush. And
Let's
yeah,
do it.
we'll see you next week.
Awesome.
Bye
Take it easy.
bye.